Welcome to the Real Estate Investment Nomad podcast. I am your host, Natalie Salas, an international real estate expert. Join me as we explore the thrilling world of global real estate. We'll uncover diverse international markets, backed by solid data and engaging insights. Each episode features expert guests from the hottest markets, providing you with the knowledge to invest wisely and successfully. Whether you are a local realtor aiming to go global or an investor curious about international opportunities, this is the podcast for you. Get ready to transform your approach and achieve global real estate success to become a real estate investment nomad. Hi, everybody. We are with the Real Estate Investment Nomad podcast. And today we have Mounia Mikou with us. We're going to go over some information and some fun facts about Portugal versus Morocco. She's originally from Morocco, and now she lives in Lisbon, and she's an attorney by trade. So we have so much to ask you and to explore the city of Lisbon, and not only that, but also the country. Welcome to the show, Mounia.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about, where you're from. You're from one of my favorite countries. And also, how do you get to this space? You're an attorney, and a little bit of your career, if you can share with us.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's quite of a journey actually, because yes, I was born and I grew up in the beautiful city of Casablanca in Morocco. And after I turned 18 years old, I went to Paris to study law, because actually my father is Moroccan and my mother is French. So I grew up in this double culture. And after growing up in Morocco, I went to study in France. And this is where I studied law and started working in a law firm. And after living 13 years in Paris, I was missing the blue sky and the warm sun. And post-COVID, actually, I went to Lisbon to visit my brother, who had just moved to Lisbon. And I literally fell in love with Lisbon. And also after, the pandemic, I also understood that for me it was quite important to be closer to my family. So I had my brother there, but also I was closer to Morocco. It's just a 1-hour flight from Lisbon to Casablanca. And I was still being very close to my friends because it's only 2 hours from Paris.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I ended up in Lisbon. And I registered with the Lisbon bar. So now I'm registered with the Paris bar, but also with the Lisbon bar. And that's where I'm practicing now as a lawyer for French and English speaking clients who have interest in Portugal.
Amazing. No, this is the perfect fit because most of our guests are between two different countries that they're familiar or have experience with, and more than one language, which in your case, you have 3 languages at least, right?
Actually, I spend my days between French, English, Portuguese, and now that I'm visiting Morocco, I'm also speaking Arabic during my days. So yeah.
Wow, so you speak also Portuguese because you have to, right? Like when you're in Portugal to understand your clients.
I have to read, I have to write, I have to speak. I translate a lot for my clients also. So yeah, my brain is always switching between different languages.
Yeah, 4 languages is quite a bit, and I thought it was hard with English and Spanish, but now with you have to think of 4 languages, covering the markets that you're in. That's awesome. So you moved to Portugal after during the pandemic. Now that you are in the space of real estate, helping clients, with the probably closing and making sure anything that they encounter online it's compliant. What would you say that the similarities are between Morocco real estate and Portugal real estate? Is there any similarities that you can be like, these are similar and these are the differences?
Well, I would say that it's 2 countries where we can find a lot of opportunities. And it's also 2 countries where it's really important to be well advised. They have some old ways of doing things when you think especially about registries, for instance. And so it can be quite difficult to navigate. There is also the language barriers, whether it's Moroccan in Morocco or Portuguese in Portugal. And that's why it's really important to find people that you trust, whether it's real estate agents like you or lawyers, to assist the client from A to Z during the whole process. And another fun fact, actually, that maybe people don't know, another common point between Morocco and Portugal is that they're both together with Spain going to organize the Football World Cup, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can see in Morocco, they're really getting ready for that and building the biggest stadium to welcome the Football World Cup. Yeah.
Mhm. That's amazing. So
Yeah,
that's
it's also a way to look at real estate, knowing that there are those projects because the infrastructures are developing very, very fast, having that in mind. To be honest, I left Portugal Morocco when I was 18, so this was in 2009, and coming back now, I'm just amazed by how things are developing. And when I compare to Portugal, what I can see actually is that after the 2008 crisis, um, luckily there were some investment and that allowed the real estate scenery to actually be reactualized. So you can see that some buildings are falling apart, but thanks to those foreign investments, there is some renewal and we have some new properties appearing. And one of the very important things that I really appreciate in Portugal is that it's important when you have an historic building to keep the facade of the building. So you can still see those beautiful azulejos when you walk in the streets, but
yeah.
actually behind those old-fashioned facade, it's very modern buildings. And this is great for the city because it really gives this balance of, yes, keeping the tradition, but at the same time, having new buildings where we can live comfortably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like at least Casablanca and Lisbon have a similar, where you're on the same side of the ocean, but looking at different directions. But the geography must be a little bit similar, right? Like I think Lisbon or Portugal has more cliffs, and Casablanca will be more as a beach. So what would you think that like a beach as a beach town, how does it operate for real estate? Is it like price wise, size? Because when I was in Casablanca the last time, I felt like there was so much construction happening, like all the time, everywhere. As you see, they're putting buildings up, and the city's growing quite a bit from what it used to be the center. Now it's like the suburbs, I would say, of Casablanca.
It's true, the suburb became just the city now. The point is that Casablanca is kind of the industrial capital of Morocco, knowing that the capital of Morocco is Rabat. But Casablanca is really super active and the business is happening in Casablanca. So it's a very fast-paced city and it's growing, 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 growing. And now the cities that were close to Casablanca seems to be just part of it. It's just spreading. Whereas when we think about Lisbon, for instance, it's really a chiller city. You go there really for calm, for peace, safety, and being very close to the beach, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different lifestyle, I would say. And in Lisbon, if you take a 30-minute ride to the south, you can reach Costa de Caparica, and it's a super long and kind of wild beach. Whereas in Morocco, if you want that, you need to be a bit further, and then you access some magic places. So if you think about Essaouira, which is 2 hours from Casablanca, it's very authentic, and you have the old Medina, etc., etc. But if you want really wild beaches, you need to go further. and there it's magic because it's the desert meeting the ocean, and that's just unique.
Wow, that's amazing. Like I haven't gone further from Casablanca. I think I only went to Marrakesh, and it was amazing. The feel of it, the desert, the colors, and then imagine if you meet to the beach, right? Like that is like awesome. That's amazing. Living there. How do you think the real estate by the water, like it's evolving in Morocco right now? Is it easy to acquire land, build? What's the trend, let's say, most people do compared to Lisbon? Because I feel like Lisbon is already a big city that is set, like there's not much room for growth because it's very tight. Well, what would you think space-wise? Beach
Well,
home.
from my understanding, in Casablanca and the whole area around Casablanca, it's becoming very challenging to find a piece of land, um, because yes, the demand is really really high, and people want to invest in Morocco because they see its potential. Within the city, there is so much tension that now houses are being transformed into building. So like there is no more space, and as you were saying, the outside parts of the city are now part of it, you know. So yeah, the demand is very very high, and I think it's quite challenging to find even a piece of land actually.
Oh. For that would be for Casablanca. Then, do you think Lisbon is kind of done growing because I mean there's not much more space to expand to, like, or is it because a lot of the real estate in Casablanca I feel like is new construction, depending if you're by the suburbs, and in Lisbon is very older buildings that need to be rehabbed, so prices are higher because there's a lot of density, but you have to work quite a bit. Like if you want to live there, there's a lot of work to be done in many of the units that have, a decent price. But people, if you buy something new, it's going to be really expensive. But if you buy something to flip or to live there or to fix it, how do you say the real estate happen? How does it work in Portugal? Like they have to get a lot of permits to do that, or is it something that you just buy something and flip it?
Yeah, it's actually a choice between a higher price or higher risk. Because yes, there is some offer about new properties that are super well done, luxurious, well located in the city center, but the prices are quite high. Or you can still find some good opportunities and then take your money, patience, and nerves into the battle to get your license, get the works done. And this is quite challenging for several reasons. In old buildings, when you buy an apartment in an old building, you never know really what you're buying until it's between your hands. And then you discover actually what are the real, let's say, problems to solve, what are the whole building conditions. So you can get assisted for that in advance for sure, but most of the time you discover things. Another that is challenging is obtaining licenses. It can take some time to obtain a license to flip the apartment. So the trick is to manage to flip the apartment without the need for a license. So this requires to work closely with architects who are quite used to that kind of processes. And another challenge then is the shortage of workers to actually do the works. We had some increases in the prices of materials. That's one thing, it's price. But then what you need is manpower. You need people who are going to be available to focus on your project and deliver your project in time. And that can sometimes be a big challenge. So what you need here again is a strong team on which you can rely. And that's what I actually help my clients with. It's having them supported by a team that is going to be there and dedicated to their project.
Mm-hmm. So share with us a little bit more about that process and how you help your clients. So if somebody wants to buy in Portugal, whether they decide, anywhere in the coast or mountain area, do you cover the whole country, and how can you help them with, like, what should they be aware of when they purchase a property in Portugal?
Yeah, sure. Well, most of my clients are actually interested in Lisbon, but I can assist them wherever they are in Portugal. So that's we don't have a limit in terms of geographical area. The first step is to get the NIF number. The NIF number is the tax identification number, and that's required for quite everything in Portugal. So from signing a contract to opening a bank account, you need a NIF number.
The NIF, NIF number?
Exactly, NIF, yeah.
Stand for just a tax number, like your...
Yeah, it's a tax number, and I can request it for you. You don't need to be in Portugal or live in Portugal to have it, but you need it to sign any contract.
Okay.
So once you have that, of course, I would say you need to know regarding your funding how you're gonna act with that. Do you need a mortgage from the bank, or are you buying cash? And once you have your budget, I would request to talk to a very good real estate agent, like the one I'm talking to at the moment, and start your research and select your property. Once you have an idea of the property you want, we're gonna carry some preliminary due diligence to check, the land registry and the tax registry, to just make sure that the basics are met before you potentially pay a reservation agreement and pay the deposit that goes with this agreement. So that will take the property out of market, so that you can take time for comprehensive legal due diligence. During this process, I would really suggest to open a bank account, because this bank account is going to facilitate the next steps. So once the due diligence are done, then we can sign the promissory contract. Usually, when we sign the promissory contract, the buyer pays a deposit of about 10 to 30% of the purchase price.
That's a the down payment. The deposit?
Yeah.
The down payment, or they're the same thing in Portugal?
No, it's different thing. One is a reservation, okay. So for the seller to stop marketing the apartment. Mm-hmm. And then, but this one is really optional, to be honest. We don't do it all the time. Sometimes we just jump straight to the promissory contract. Mm-hmm. And for the promissory contract, basically, the buyer is committed to buy the property, and the seller is also committing to sell the property. Mm-hmm. And usually these commitments are under some conditions. So for instance, the condition to get the funding for the buyer, or the condition to get the needed licenses by the seller. Mm-hmm. And once all the conditions are met, then we're gonna move to the closing and sign the deed. So these are the steps. And once the deed is signed, so the final price is paid, and the buyer is getting his keys or her keys, then we make sure to register the new ownership at the land registry, and to also update the tax records. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the buyer can transfer all the utility contracts.
Okay, perfect.
And I would say that for this whole process, it can take between 1 month to 3 months, depending on whether there is a mortgage funding, whether there are some needs to update any documents, if there is any need for getting a license. Well, but usually between 1 and 3 months, we're getting things done.
Okay. And the property taxes, I know it will vary by location and maybe by county, but is there any sales tax on the purchase that it's applied like a duty stamp or something like that for Portugal? And do you happen to know more or less how much that is for closing cost, or it will just vary from depending on the location?
Well, there are different things. So indeed, there is a tax that applies to the transfer in itself. And that tax is a progressive tax rate based on the purchase price. And it goes from 0 to 7.5%. So if we talk about a property that is over 1 million euro, it's going to be a tax of 7.5%. Okay. Then on top of that, there is a stamp duty. It's a flat rate of 0.8% of the purchase price. And then we add what we call the notary and the registration fees, which is typically about 0.2 to 0.4% of the property value. But then what you're talking about, I guess, when you mentioned what depends on the location, is the municipal property tax. And the municipal property tax is not a tax on the transaction, but it's an annual tax that applies to the owner of the property. And this tax usually varies between 0.3 to 0.45%, but it's not a percentage of the purchase price, but it's a percent of the tax valuation of the property. And usually the tax valuation is really lower than the purchase price. Okay. It's an evaluation that is made by the tax authority based on the land area, on the construction area, the location, and the characteristics of the property. And have a real estate portfolio that is over 600,000 euros. There is an additional property tax, which goes from 0.7% of that value that is over 600,000 euros to, if you have more than 2 million euros of real estate portfolio, it's going to be 1.5% that will apply. So I'm talking a lot about taxes, but I guess it's not that much compared to what you can be used to in the US or in France, especially because it's important to not focus just on the tax rate, but really understand on what value this rate is applied. And when we talk about the tax valuation of the property, it's really, as I was saying, much lower than the purchase price. So no need to be that worried.
Gotcha. So then in Mexico, we call it valor catastral, like what the city gives it. And the other one will be the commercial value for what you buy it for. So then it's applied into what the government says your house is worth. And usually they say that's less than the commercial price. That's great because then your taxes might be much less. Because what I know that a lot of people move to Portugal to save in property taxes because it's very, very low year over year. You know, in the US, your house can be $20,000 in property taxes alone for 1 year. So that's a lot of money, and it just keeps going up and up. So people, I think in the US and Canada sometimes are fed up with the taxation and the taxes that keep going up every year. That's why they consider countries like Portugal, Mexico to retire, because I really like when we see our tax bills in Mexico, like we call it, the property tax is what's the name of in Spanish? Impuesto predial. I don't know if you guys have something similar. The impuesto predial was very little, like maybe $300-400 a year for us here in Mexico. So comparing with 20,000 or 400 per year is like crazy. Just that itself makes you get curious about international real estate.
Yeah, definitely. I know someone who actually sold their property in Paris because it was just becoming too expensive, too
Mhm.
expensive. When you take the into account not only the tax but also the price to take care actually of your property, then it just adds up, and sometimes it's just too much. So yes, moving that money to Portugal can be much more interesting for sure.
Mhm. No, I love anything that has to do with property taxes savings, especially in the locations in like Europe. And not all Europe is the same, you know. There's, you know, like you said, the France side of things and Germany probably, and then there's the Mediterranean, which I feel like even Spain also has those benefits of less taxes, property taxes for citizens. And in your perspective, going back to comparing, let's say, Portugal to Morocco, for the exchange rate, you know, like the currency, because Portugal is in euros, so maybe the prices might be a little higher, while in Morocco, where you know Moroccan dirhams, for the purchase, like for $100,000, is there anything you can find in Lisbon these days, or not anymore? Versus, let's say, Morocco.
For 100,000 euros.
Yeah, like is there any? I mean, 300,000 and up is in Lisbon, but I mean, what can you get for a couple hundred? Let's say.
Well, in Lisbon for an apartment with I would say 2 rooms, you're gonna start, yes, around, I would say, 300 euros, 300,000 euros for sure.
Mhm.
And in Morocco, depending on whether you're in the city or in the countryside, but yes, you could afford a nice house, for instance, in the countryside with a beautiful garden, being close to the beach, etc., etc. So yeah, I think it's different opportunities, but it's also different projects.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's not only about the price and what you can get in terms of real estate, but it's also about what's the project you have behind, and
Mhm.
whether it's about a return on investment or the lifestyle that you want to get with that.
Mhm. The for would you say that most people in Portugal buy for lifestyle or mostly for like an investment? And if so, do you know if the government has a lot of regulations with Airbnb and short-term rentals? Like right now, like there's it's happening in Spain quite a bit. They're cutting off the benefits of having Airbnb and where you can do it and how you can do it, and then the taxes that will come with it for the rental income. Do you see something similar happening in Lisbon, like getting more restricted, or is it like open, like an open market for everybody?
Well, for a while, actually, there were a lot of investment for renting, actually, and a lot for Airbnbs. And this had led to a shortage of rental properties and to a really big increase in terms of rent. So yes, the city started by deciding to not give any more licenses for Airbnb type of renting, and then just expanded to the country. So the idea now is to really promote long-term renting, and the taxes on the rents that are generated by renting an apartment are now lower and lower when the term of the contract gets longer.
Mhm. Okay.
The idea is to push the landlords to sign contracts of 5 years or more.
Hmm.
That that's the goal now, especially in Lisbon, but in the whole country, to make renting more affordable. And yes, I would say that then there are two things. Some people are just deciding to uh, keep on going for short-term renting, So those who have the licenses are really taking advantage of them. The others are, I guess, hesitating, because when they are intending to rent as an Airbnb and don't have that return on the investment, they can hesitate a bit more. But still, Portugal is really a big destination for the lifestyle, actually. People living there are just loving it. It's a very, very special place to live, where it's sunny most of the time, close to the beach, close to nature. I'm talking about forest, mountain, and also close to all the European capitals, and also Moroccan one, actually. So yeah, the lifestyle is really, really good there. It's also a very safe place. And in addition to that, for those who have children, it's a very good destination in terms of education. And universities there are really putting the focus also on international students with programs that are 100% in English. So it's also a good destination for the whole family, actually.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that because I mean it's been growing quite a bit. Lisbon is being in the map for many, many years, and I think after the pandemic, more people have considered that as a home for digital nomads. Also, couples that are empty nesters about to retire or already retired, they have considered Portugal a safe place to park their money and also their living there. Do you see a lot of nationalities coming to Lisbon, and if so, what are the main let's say, ethnicity that comes and stays in Portugal? It's mostly Americans, Canadians, Australians, all over the place, Europeans. What is the kind of the demographics that you see?
Well, the number one population in Portugal, I would say, are the Brazilians. For an obvious reason is that they already speak Portuguese. So it's quite a big community, actually, in Portugal. But then it's really European and Americans. So yes, Americans within the European community, the French community is one. You have districts that are called the French districts. Basically, you can just walk in the street speaking French, and it's totally fine. And also, you have more and more Chinese investors also in Portugal. So that's an interesting move too.
Oh wow, that's great because it's very diverse. It's like a diverse place for anybody.
Yeah, definitely. It's really an international platform because, as you said, like it's attracting a big diversity actually of people. From originally, it was people who wanted to retire in Portugal, and they were attracted through some very strong tax incentives. Then it was for a lot of people out of the EU, thanks to the passport that were possible to obtain after 5 years of residence. So that attracted actually a lot of non-European citizens to invest in Portugal, and for some to live in Portugal, depending on the programs. Mm-hmm. But then, yes, the digital nomads, so they're coming from all over the world now. And also there are a lot of people, I would say, who had a corporate life, and after COVID, rethinking their priorities and deciding to go for the lifestyle and starting an entrepreneurial life in Portugal, for instance. So yes, it's a big diversity of profiles and origins. And I think that also contributes to making Portugal such a good destination, because you know that you're going to be surrounded by like-minded people, and you're going to actually travel by staying in Lisbon. So it's quite interesting and very stimulating.
Yeah, I think there was the program for the golden visa, and now they have removed it, right? Like Portugal has stopped that I think it was this year or at the end of last year that they say no more golden visas for real estate investors.
Yeah, exactly. There are no more golden visa for real estate investors, but the golden visa still exists.
Okay.
So there is still the possibility of investing 500,000 euro to get a golden visa. But investing it in real estate is not gonna qualify.
Okay.
Another golden visa is by giving a donation of 250,000 euro to the cultural patrimony of Portugal. And the specificity of the golden visa compared to a residence visa is that with the golden visa, the holder of this visa only needs to visit Portugal 7 days per year. They don't need to stay in Portugal. And after 5 years, they can request a Portuguese passport. So basically, they get a European citizenship, and that's just amazing. But another option is to go for the traditional residency visa. There is no need to invest such amounts, and the person can live in Portugal, work in Portugal, or start a business in Portugal, or study in Portugal. And after staying 5 years in Portugal, they can request the passport.
Okay. So there are other ways around that just not does not include real estate right now, at least.
Exactly, exactly. If the goal is to get a passport, it is possible. Yes.
Okay, that's great to know. So there's other ways, but just not with specific real estate. And
Great.
there is always a way around it. For the cities, let's say, that are more populated by expats, what are the main cities that you consider in Portugal that are concentrated with uh, people who come and stay as a resident, as a citizen, becoming a citizen? What it would be the popular towns that you see growing quite a bit, or what's the potential for growth? Because people want to see ahead, right? Like they don't want to buy something at the top of the market. They want to see what's trending or trending in the future, so they can be like, okay, maybe I'll move there because they're just getting started or something like that.
I understand. Well, so Lisbon is already full, as we mentioned, but what is still very interesting is the region around Lisbon. So people are going actually further and further around Lisbon. So there is the part of Cascais, for instance, which is already very high-end Portuguese destination. People live in Cascais and some are working in Lisbon. It's only a 30-minute ride. But then you can also go a bit further and further. And some are also investing in 𝗙𝗙𝗘𝗃, which is called the surf Mecca. All surfers are gathering there. And also 𝗙𝗙𝗃𝗃. It's very quiet towns and perfect to chill. Or closer to Lisbon, but on the other side of the river, is Costa de Caparica. And there you're by the ocean. It's an endless beach going to the south of Portugal. And there are still good deals to sign. And also the other side of the river, but not by the beach, but more on the countryside, you can still have some very good opportunities when you look at Seychelles and Casillas, for instance, or Almada. These are very close to Lisbon. They're connected by boat, actually crossing the river in, I think it takes like 10 minutes. So that these are also good opportunities to consider. And or otherwise it's the Algarve, but Algarve is already very famous destination.
Yeah, we keep hearing about Algarve. It's an island, right? It's an island, or in the coast, in the tip
No,
top.
it's not an island, but it's the southern part of Portugal, and a lot of people went there to retire, especially English and German people chose it because it's really beautiful and sunny, and so they can enjoy their time there.
That's awesome. And for, let's say, your buyers that you work with, and after they select their city, is it a market for cash mostly? You have to pay in cash, or there's some financing options for buyers, let's say that they come from abroad, or is it just very restricted for the lending side of things for local people?
Well, it's true that most of them actually are paying cash because we're talking about properties that are over 1 million euros, and most of the time they're just paying cash. Sometimes they decide to fund half of it, and that kind of situation is not really complicated when you're looking for funding for just half of the value of the property, because the bank is going to be very secured by the mortgage it's going to take on the property. So for that kind of profiles, I would say funding is not really a challenge. It's more of a challenge when we're talking about trying to fund 100% of the property.
Okay.
And the challenge is higher because the bank usually is requesting a 30% cash from the person, whereas from Portuguese people or Portuguese residents, it's only 20% or 10% cash that is going to be requested. And actually, Portugal is really trying to do its best to support young people. So young is less than 35 years old, to buy property, to buy their first property. Okay. And for that, the government is securing the funding so that the bank lends 100% of the value of the property. So that's super interesting for people who are less than 35 years old. All they need to do is to be resident in Portugal. No matter, it's not a matter if they're foreigners, but they need to be resident in Portugal and be less than 35 years old. And on top of that is to fund their purchase, they also have an exemption of tax.
Okay.
If the property is under 300, I don't remember the exact number, sorry, but about 320,000 euro, there are no tax on the transfer of property.
Okay. 220.
So that's quite interesting.
So they're motivating really young people to buy.
Exactly. They want to help young people to get their first house, basically.
Mm-hmm. So almost 100% financing under 35. You have to be a resident of Portugal to apply. So that's awesome, because then you can actually just spend some time there, become a resident, and then probably apply if you're younger than 35.
Exactly. And that works until the year where you are 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say, move to Portugal, live there and buy a house for sure. And also regarding that tax exemption, it's quite interesting actually. You have a full exemption until 320,000 euro. And then it's just a partial exemption if the property is under 600,000 euros. Okay. And if it's a couple buying, then the values are doubling. So it's really interesting. It's there are various options to consider depending on who you are, what are your projects, what's your profile, and what you want. Yeah.
Awesome. No, this is good. This is good information, because I didn't know that there's some programs to help the youth get on their feet, since they usually they have savings or they live with their parents. It's hard for them to get started when the market it's high in prices where you live. Perfect. So then that's good to know. Is there there's no financing whatsoever for foreign, right? Like they have to mostly buy cash or from the seller's finance?
No, they can be funded because the bank is going to take a mortgage on the property. It's just that they're gonna have to put more cash in for the bank to follow.
Some payments. Okay.
Yeah.
And for, let's say, the challenges and some of the risks that people need to consider in the market, in this market. I know Portugal is very secure, but what are some things that you would suggest people to keep an eye on, to stay away from, or to ask, a question, let's say, to you and be like, hey, if this happens, just be mindful that this could be a risk or fraud, or, something like that. Or is it very safe in Portugal to buy and finish what they say they're going to finish, at least the developers?
Well, that's really a good question, because it's not only the language barrier, but also the cultural differences. And I think that's where it's really important to be surrounded by people you really trust when you invest such an amount of money, because you want to get your return on investment, or you want to have that house and potentially those delays respected. So for sure, don't just trust, and be aware of what are the other person's interests and what they want. And only trust those who have your interest at heart. That's really, really important. Because yes, there are some delays. If there are some construction works, there are delays when it regards obtaining licenses. And you can have people telling you what you want to hear for you to buy. And I would say it's really important to get some objective advices when you're in that kind of situation, even though that person might tell you things that you don't want to hear, but maybe it's better to know and take informed decisions than just hope for the best and then face the delusion, basically.
Problems
So,
later. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Have a good team next to you, not only from the real estate side, also from the legal side of things, and maybe a bit of the taxation to make sure you don't miss anything. Would that be the closing? Same, similar? Do you have to go to the notary, finalize the process there? You go there with your attorney? Just a little bit on the closing part for the closing costs and process.
Regarding the closing, actually, you need a notary. And the notary deed can be done by the notary or by a lawyer. In Portugal, lawyers have notarial powers, actually. So lawyers can actually draft the deed for you.
Okay,
so
okay.
that's a good thing. One essential thing is that the deed needs to be translated in your language. So you're not going to sign a deed in Portuguese without having it translated to you.
Okay.
That's why I always go with my clients to translate the deed for them. But more important than that also is to make sure everything is correct. And I can tell you that most of the time we are requesting some changes on the notary deed because, yeah, we are humans, we're not perfect. So there are always some mistakes here and there that happen. And in the process, I would really say, be careful with who you're talking to, and yeah, try to see the red flags and listen to your intuition. I've been assisting someone who was dealing with a very shady real estate agent, and actually it appeared. So yeah, the process was really weird. And then we understood what was going on. Is that the real estate agent of the seller was showing as the real estate of the seller, but actually the seller had already signed an agreement with exclusivity with another real estate agent. So there are some things like that, a bit shady that are happening, and you don't want a position. So yeah, make sure to be talking to people with an actual license to do anything any service that they're providing you with, whether it's real estate services or legal services.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. For sure, there's so many things. When you say, I think out of US and Canada, the market is not regulated in many, many places around the world. And many people wonder, like, why? But it's just the way each country operates. So that's why having a good team on your side that knows what they're doing. And also once you're, they're working for your benefit, not for their own. That would be like, a must have. And I love the fact that you say follow your intuition. Very few attorneys say that. Because it's more like black and white in law. But I believe the same. Like they have to follow, if it feels right and if it's the right place and you're working with the right people. I think you'll know if it's not. Do you see some trends right now in Portugal, just as we close, that people should be aware of, or what's happening right now? Like, where the economy is moving. Like, more people are moving to certain areas, as we mentioned, some of the big, main cities. Do you see any trends that will be increasing the real estate market over there in the next 5 to 10 years?
Wow, I would love to tell you how Portugal is going to be in the next 5 or 10 years. I guess it's just gonna continue on that trend that has been actually quite steady in terms of prices just going slowly higher and higher and higher. Every year we think it's gonna stabilize, but the only thing we notice is that it's just steadily going higher. I would say that yes, cities like Lisbon are just gonna expand more and more, especially on the other side of the bridge of the river, and I guess it's still gonna continue to attract more and more people. We see a lot of people also coming from countries like the US for political reasons. Same with Southern America. The instability basically in the rest of the world is providing more and more people to Portugal. And I would say also that on the other side, with the great education that Portugal is offering, it's also a big attractivity for younger generations. So I think Portugal is just like attracting people from all over the world, each for their own reasons, but they all are agree to actually meet in Portugal. So yeah, I guess things are just gonna keep going the same way, basically.
Nice. It's good to know that the trend is going up. There's a lot of happening there. Schools, lifestyle, investments. I mean, the views there are amazing. For you get the sunset like we do here in the West Coast. And being there, I feel like you feel like you're in freedom. It's like, you can breathe fresh air. There's so many types of geography for everybody. Like if you like beach, mountains, southern, luxury, downtown life, everything. Like you can find something within Portugal, and it looks like a big country, but it's very skinny. And you can see, I mean, I feel like once you know a little bit of Portugal, you can move around easily.
Yeah, and I would say another also difference is that you can have all that diversity in less than an hour drive, actually. When I think about LA, for instance, within 1 hour drive, you're just still in LA.
Yeah, true, true. And while you're there, you can even drive across Europe in that case.
Yeah, exactly. You're already in Spain.
Also, this is what's great information. I think a lot of data that, sometimes some fun facts that we don't know about, since you are there, you live it every day. So it's great to have the knowledge from a person that actually has been, is there, has been there, done that, and actually goes through this process almost every week, let's say. So we have one last question that is, if you have somebody in mind that you can suggest for this podcast that is like you, international, is in more than one country, speaks more than one language, because we would love to have more guests like you. So if you have anybody in mind, you can suggest it now, or we can put it in the comments below.
Yeah, well, actually, I have several people in mind because the international community in Lisbon is really huge. So I could suggest you a list of person, maybe depending also on what they're doing in Portugal. You might be interested in different kind of profiles. So I will be happy to suggest them to you and then connect you to them for sure.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, Mounia. This was a pleasure chatting with you, learning from you, and also understanding more of, how is living in Lisbon at this point. And 2025 is so different. But every year, I feel like Portugal is getting more people from all over the world. And now when you go there is, literally you meet people from everywhere.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, well, Natalie, thank you so much for this conversation. It was my first podcast. I was quite stressed, but I really loved it and just enjoyed the conversation. And also, if you want, I can share with you some resources because I write articles, especially on the tax aspect of things. I have some blog posts, and also I write some posts on LinkedIn about the process and how to secure the transaction, etc., etc. So I can share that with you if your audience might be interested. That could be good resources for them.
Yeah, where can people find you online under the same name? Mounia?
Yes, on LinkedIn it's Mounia Mikou, and then my website is 𝗙𝗥𝗘𝗘𝗏. That easy.
And then they can go to all your social media from there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see everybody next time.
Yes, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Natalie. See you in Portugal soon.
Yeah, I'll see you there. Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Investment Nomad podcast. I hope today's episode has inspired you to explore new horizons in global real estate. Remember, the world is full of opportunities waiting to be discovered. And with the right insights, you can turn those opportunities into successful investments. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us bring you the best content possible. Don't forget to follow us in social media for more resources and updates. Until next time, my friends, this is Natalie Salas, encouraging you to think big, invest globally, and transform your real estate journey. Safe travels and happy investing.